In December 1999, Charles Schulz sat alone in his studio when the phone rang. Minutes later, he whispered two words that ended 50 years of devotion. "It's over." His trembling hands could no longer draw, and cancer had taken away the one thing that had given his life meaning. When asked if Peanuts should continue without him, Schulz refused. "When I'm done, it's done." And just like that, the world's most beloved comic strip ended in silence, not with applause, but with a broken man saying goodbye to his life's only companion, the drawings that had carried his soul. Charles Monroe Schulz was born on November 26, 1922, in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His father, a humble barber, and his mother, often sick but loving, raised him through the harsh years of the Great Depression. As an only child, Charles grew up quiet and withdrawn, finding comfort not in friends, but in his drawings, especially of his dog, Spike. When Spike died, 10-year-old Charles buried him himself, and that heartbreak became the seed for Snoopy, a dog who, unlike Spike, would never truly leave. At school, Charles was shy and small, often ignored or mocked. His loneliness became the blueprint for Charlie Brown's nervous smile and endless hope. Drawing was the one thing that made sense, and with every sketch, he built a small refuge from the silence around him. In 1943, just as his life was beginning, tragedy struck again. His mother, the one who believed most in his dreams, died of cancer just 3 days before he was drafted into the U.S. Army. He went to war carrying grief too heavy for words. Serving as a staff sergeant in Europe, Schulz saw death up close, from frozen battlefields to the liberated Dachau concentration camp. Those memories shaped his art forever. Every Peanuts strip, he later said, carried a piece of his mother and of that quiet sadness he could never shake. When the war ended, he returned home, scarred, but determined to draw again. He began sketching a comic called Lil Folks for a local paper. Simple, honest, and full of gentle sadness. When editors dropped it, he sent it to a syndicate in New York. They loved it, but renamed it Peanuts, a title he despised, saying it made his work sound small. Yet on October 2, 1950, Peanuts debuted in 7 newspapers. The first strip featured Charlie Brown walking by as 2 kids said, "Good old Charlie Brown, I hate him." In those few words, the world met a boy who perfectly mirrored his creator's bittersweet humor and aching sincerity. 2 days later, Snoopy arrived, a dog who dreamed, danced, and believed. Even when his master couldn't, by the 1960s, Peanuts had become a global phenomenon, printed in hundreds of newspapers, featured on lunchboxes and loved by millions. But behind the success, Schulz remained the quiet, lonely man from Minnesota. He married Joyce Halverson and had children, but he spent most of his time alone in his studio, working 6 days a week. "No one else can draw my feelings," he said, refusing assistance. That dedication made him a legend, but also a prisoner of his own perfectionism. The heartbreak that once inspired him deepened with time. The little red-haired girl, Charlie Brown's unreachable love, was based on Donna Johnson, a real woman who had rejected Schulz's proposal. He never truly recovered, writing about that heartbreak for the rest of his life. His genius gave birth to classics like A Charlie Brown Christmas in 1965, a quiet, soulful story that executives thought would fail, but became a timeless success. Yet even as the world adored him, Schulz felt a sadness that never lifted. By the 1970s, his hand began to tremble from exhaustion. Decades of work had taken their toll. When the syndicate secretly prepared backup strips by another artist in case he died, Schulz was furious. He renegotiated his contract so that Peanuts could never be drawn by anyone else. It was his life, and no one else's. By the late 1990s, at 76, Schulz's body began to fail him. His tremor worsened, and cancer struck without mercy. The treatments stole his vision and strength. Finally, in December 1999, knowing he could no longer draw, he made the hardest decision of his life. Peanuts would end with him. On December 14th, he announced his retirement, his voice trembling with emotion as he said, "I never dreamed this is how it would end. But all of a sudden, it's gone." 2 months later, on February 12, 2000, Charles Schulz passed away in his sleep, just hours before his final Sunday strip appeared in newspapers around the world. In that farewell comic, Snoopy sat at his typewriter, writing, "Dear friends, thank you for your support." It was his goodbye, drawn by his own trembling hand, printed the morning after he was gone. For 50 years, Charles Schulz turned loneliness into laughter and heartbreak into hope. He never missed a single day of Peanuts, and when he finally let go, the world wept with him. Even now, Charlie Brown's failures and Snoopy's dreams remind us of something deeply human, that even in sadness, there's beauty. Even in loss, there's love, and that sometimes the quietest people leave behind the loudest echoes.